Hello and welcome to this session of the Biophilic University and beyond, given as part of the UK Healthy Universities Network online meeting. As well as this video, the PowerPoint presentation is available, and later on you'll see a link to a SWAY presentation which talks a little bit more about the Biophilic University. But first, a quick look ahead. What's the key question? Why does this stuff matter? Then we'll take a brief look at some of the things and people who inspire us. We'll have a quick review of some of our student projects, both at BSc and MSc level. And finally, a look at the concept of the Biophilic University, where we'll meet the bee again. Here's one reason why we care. Normally the food supply chain is very efficient, but as we've all seen during the emergency, it can have problems. Another characteristic of modern food supplies is complexity and the length of many food supply chains. Also, the UK is not alone in importing much more food than exports, and perhaps we need to find better ways both to manage the supply chain and also, crucially, to grow more food locally. Again, looking wider, there are 500,000 plant species in the world, but we rely on four main crops: wheat, rice, maize and soybean, for more than 3/4 of our food supply. In fact, 7 billion people rely directly on these crops, which are increasingly in demand for food for livestock and bioenergy systems such as bioethanol. So again, another reason why we perhaps need to look at more diverse ways of feeding the world. Then there's a growing human population, and also that of farmed animals. In 1950, each person in the world had a notional 0.45 hectares of land available to grow food for their consumption. That's now down to 0.15 hectares. During that time, we have seen dramatic improvements in crop yields, starting with the Green Revolution instituted by Norman Borlaug and his collaborators. But I think it's clear that it's still going to be an issue at least for the rest of this century. The crisis has produced some innovative solutions, including this vending machine for Sunday lunch, which is a real thing. You can read about it in the Guardian article. When you see the presentation, you'll notice various things have a red box around them. That means they're a link. I'll just mention that in passing. Like many ideas, though it sounds great, its scalability may prove to be a bit of an issue. Okay, some of the things that inspire us both locally and internationally. The link here is to what I think of the most inspirational video about anything ever. It's well worth a look and sharing widely. It's set in the Tokyo-based recruitment agency Persona, who have dedicated 20% of their 215,000 square foot office space to growing fresh vegetables, making it the largest urban farm in Japan. My question when I show this to students or others is not would you like to work somewhere like this, but why don't we work somewhere like this, which again will take us back to the Biophilic University concept a little bit later on. Small solutions, the power of small actions. Pam Warhurst in her Edible Landscapes. Pam was in to see the students last year. We had a great session, slightly interrupted by fire alarms, it has to be said, as I recall. But we made some good links, and the students, particularly through the Student Nutrition Society, are continuing their links with Pam. There's lots of exciting stuff going on there. Novel technologies are popping up all over the place at the moment. NASA's reported fermentation of hydrenotrophs, molecules that use CO2 as a food source, is similar in principle to the methanotropes, which use methane as their food, which are used to produce fish food by a company called Callista just down the road from me at the old Wilton ICI site. Then of course there's corn, a major player in alternative food sources, again just down the road at Stokesley and across the Tees at Billingham. I never cease happily telling people that the core food technology from corn that's behind the most successful vegan product ever, Greg's Vegan Pasties, was largely developed by one of our food graduates, something which we are very proud of, and they are great pasties. We can't buy them at the moment, of course, but they will be back. Okay, some of the projects we do, both at BSc and MSc level. As well as formal projects, we actively encourage students to engage with outside partners, and here are our first years and food staff, helping our friends from Cultivate Tees Volume on their many projects, CDV, do great work around the area, and again we'll be re-engaged with them as soon as conditions allow in the future. For projects, we have a key principle. We need evidence to persuade people, and perhaps especially funders, that new ways of producing food could be both effective, and cost efficient. So we think of real-world solutions, we think about scalability. We try to understand the science, we try to decide what we can measure. Then we do the measurements, we evaluate the effectiveness of solutions we produce, and then we go back, feed them back into the next generation of solutions. And hopefully in this way we'll eventually produce really efficient solutions for growing food locally and to scale. We do quite a lot in hydroponics, ranging from very small systems to semi-tech scale, looking at general plant growth and how to promote the production of important micronutrients. We also do very cheap things, such as growing a very simple thing anyone could do, which is growing beans in a reuse recycled plastic bowl. You need to buy sprouting beans, but they're not that hard to find. Or perhaps using a kratky jar, which is the little plant in front of the cacti in the middle on my desk. Again, just a recycled plastic bowl. Here's a project which is being led by my colleague Ambroise, looking at how pollen production impacts on the human environment. It's likely to be a continuing focus in public health, with pollen-induced allergies and asthma continuing to grow. At the moment, we really aren't clear about how climate change will affect distribution of pollen and its impact on people around the world. So in this project, we're growing particular grasses in a range of different ways, including in small-scale hydroponic systems. That allows us to grow them under very controlled conditions. We can control the nutrients and get a good baseline for growing in other situations. Another area interested in, again with our friends from Cultivate Tees Valley and their partners, is Aquaponics, which is essentially a way of a fish tank which has a hydroponic system on top of it. The fish produce waste, which is pumped into via a filter into where the plants are growing and acts as nutrients for the plants. Closed system, potentially producing fish for consumption, and also plants, typically green leafy vegetables, also for consumption. We probably wouldn't grow koi. We're more likely to grow something like cold freshwater species like trout. But it's not that simple. You can't just turn up and start aquaponics. It requires considerable attention to technical details, but also legal and regulatory issues. One of our recent MSc Advanced Practice students did a fine project disentangling the legal issues and thinking about issues around scalability. I know he certainly hopes to develop an aquaponics business in the future based on this work. In parallel to this project, another very good MSc project looked in detail at what we need to measure to ensure students' systems work well, both in terms of production and animal welfare. And there's a range of things which we need to measure, some which are quite simple to measure, other which are quite complicated. So we've also been thinking about scalable, cheap solutions for doing measurements. So another project student has looked at using Raspberry Pi microcomputers, linked to data loggers and a range of sensors reading from the top on the right there, temperature sensor, humidity, oxygen and pH. Can we link them to cheap systems, to monitor systems, and also ultimately control systems? So for example, if you find your pH is getting a bit low, the system will be self-correcting. Permaculture is a word you may or may not have come across. Again, it's something which our partners from Cultivate Tees Valley are interested in, and other local groups. There's a video on YouTube titled "What is Permaculture?" And it's basically 5 minutes of people shrugging their shoulders and saying, I don't know, I think it's something to do with trees. It's not that bad. The concept is reasonably well defined. It perhaps needs a little bit more scientific rigour. Basically, it's a collection of strategies to grow food sustainably. Once again, we had a project student looking at this, and this is a partial mind map from analysis they did of the various aspects of permaculture and the things we could potentially measure. I couldn't include everything here for reasons of space, but I guess one of the areas we are looking at is soil, where we can do a range of things relatively straightforwardly, looking at pH and metal contamination by CPMS, and looking at structure and seeing how it changes over time. does permaculture change the soil over time compared to traditional methods of growing both plants and animals? Here's a project which was interrupted by the emergency, which is a bit of a pity, but obviously there are larger scale issues taking place. Inspired largely by the student herself. What she's doing is using microfungi to break down food waste, with hydroxylate, that is the broken down product, then being used to grow algae as a food source. We're making good progress in this, and we will certainly revisit it in the future. Algae as a food. Spirulina is, I guess, the most well-known thing in this area, or technically it's a cyanobacter, which is used as a food supplement, but there are many other possibilities, both for human food and for animal food. Small scale is good, and this elegant system is a micro algae farm produced by the Korean studio Ulrim. It seems to be more of a concept than a product, so this is definitely something I'd like our current students to have a look at, if any of them are listening to this. On a larger scale, perhaps it's duckweed, which we looked at a project a couple of years back. Under the right conditions, it will double its biomass in a couple of days. Apparently it doesn't taste very nice, but it might be used as a food source for animals. So finally, the Biophilic University, which at the moment is an aspiration, but something which many of TU's staff and students would like us to move towards. There's a nice picture of the green wall by the side of the business school. What we want is plants all over the university, both inside and out. There's already a lot of great work going on, and the bee is back to introduce the bee for one of our bee-friendly gardens, which are very popular with people walking around the university, and also happily bees. Indoor and outdoor plants scattered around the university. A lot of good work being done. Also one or two perhaps less fortunate spots which we will gloss over fairly quickly. I walk around the university and I see many windows. If I squint, I can see plants growing behind them. Perhaps as window farms, enlivening the environment, improving the air quality, making people feel better about where they work, making the university look even more striking to the staff and students and people who walk past. I'm quite sure why that one didn't appear straight away, but there it is. There's a QR code there which you can click on, which will take you to one of my sways, which has a little bit more detail on this. But for now, thanks for listening. In summary, I'd suggest we all need to find ways to produce food in much more sustainable and enjoyable ways. So again, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this.